Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about attachment styles. If you know nothing about attachment styles, this is a really good place for you to be, especially if you find that your anxiety is super like in high overdrive in relationships. Keep watching. All right, so if this is the first time that you are watching any of my videos, my name is Desiree Wilson. I'm a licensed mental health counselor located down here in Florida. I'm also the owner and clinical director for Anxious Black Girls. If you want to learn more about what we do in my private practice, go to anxiousblackgirls.com. Also, just as a summary of like the amazing women that we serve, our clients are usually high functioning, pretty successful, amazing Black women in their spaces. However, they really struggle with like the normalization of stress and overthinking and overdoing and taking on too much and feeling like they just are struggling in those extra areas because there isn't like a clear like end and beginning, right? Because they just go full on in, right? So we then pull them back, give them the kind of healing and coping strategies and all of the good stuff, right, that they need in order to have a life that ease is normal, rest is normal, calm is normal, dysfunction is up out of here, right? And we do the rewiring and the really hard stuff together as a team because I always want my clients to know that they don't have to do everything alone. They're so used to doing things alone. So if you want to learn more about our clients and how we are no longer normalizing stress over here, right? Go to anxiousblackgirls.com. So today we are focusing on attachment styles. If you've never heard about attachment styles, you may not have been able to like put a name to it. However, I'm sure that you show up in one of these ways in your romantic relationships especially, and I just want to give you the knowledge that you need to learn how to self-regulate so that these unhealthy and very like insecure ways that you're trying to make connections in your relationships don't prevent you from like being able to like be present and join healthily and have healthy dependence in your relationship versus like codependency, needing to be validated, all of the unhealthy things, really anxious, and because your anxiety is always on 10, then you're in a relationship just acting all types of crazy, right? And I don't use that word lightly, right? I mean, when we are in relationships and we are like super anxious, it causes us to behave in a way that is really just not a good representation of who we are. So usually I have my handy dandy iPad, but sis is upstairs and I'm not going upstairs, right? Because I normalize rest. So what is within my reach? Right? That's my phone. So I'm going to be using my phone to give you like the like clinical details and then just kind of give you some more information, right? So what exactly is attachment styles? And the only reason I'm reading off of this because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. I tend to can go on tangents and I want to make sure that I give it to you the way that I wrote it on here. And if you want to get a copy of this just so that you can have it in your like digital library somewhere, right, in your phone, and you can reference it. Go to Anxious Black Girls /videos and then just look for the video on attachment styles and the worksheet will be there. And also I probably put it in the YouTube somewhere down here somewhere. Okay. All right. So attachment styles includes like how you connect in your relationships. How are you learning to make connections, get your needs met, understand closeness and intimacy? And it's really tied to the significant and early relationships in your life. So did those early caregivers, the primary caregivers, did they meet your needs when you cried? Did someone pay attention to you? Were they attentive? Were they loving? All of those amazing things. Because the way that we learn how to be in a relationship is based off of those early relationships that we have in our life. So if those relationships were rooted in drama, in absence, in trauma, then that becomes normalized for us. And then we develop some sort of coping, or we develop a way of being in a relationship that is representative of those earlier experiences, and those things get normalized, good or bad. right? So there's 4 different types of attachment, okay? We have the anxiously attached, the avoidance, right? We have the fearful avoidant, and then we have the securely attached people. So out of the 4, 3 of those are insecure attachments. And when I say insecure attachments, what I mean is that when you are in relationship, all of your stuff gets activated, gets triggered, and you are like in a constant state of just like turmoil and discomfort, and you are like just not your best self, right? And you take a lot of what your other partner does very personally, and your behaviors are very dependent on the other person and how they behave, right? So you get all of your validation, all of your like confirmation about like, are things okay? And you shift back and forth based off of how they're operating, versus a securely attached person. Understand that in relationships come and go, that, you know, people break up, right? That I can change, that I am an important part of my relationship, right? But then also there's lots of like security and like self-validation. So they don't look for you to make them feel okay. All right. So let's break them down even more. So shout out to my anxiously attached people. The majority of y'all come to see me, right? And as a former, like highly anxiously attached woman myself, I'm way more secure than I used to be, but that required a lot of work, right? But a person who is anxiously attached in their relationships, closeness and feeling connected in your relationships creates that security for you. Right? So if my partner is sweating me, is all about me and everything that they're doing, I'm reading and interpreting the relationship as something that is secure for me and is very, very reassuring to me, then we're great. The minute they start to pull away, whether it be an actual pulling away versus my perception of them pulling away, then my anxiety goes through the roof. And I'm saying that as my, like, as if I'm speaking through you, right? Because I used to be like that, but not so more. Shout out to growth, right? So if that feels like you, where the minute you think that they're pulling away, that they're not as engaged, they stop texting as much, they're not calling, you don't think to yourself like, I wonder what's going on with them, in a way that's like curious and like wanting to like help them, right? Or and not even help, but recognizing that you don't have anything necessarily to do with the shifts in their behaviors. You don't read that as a threat necessarily. You notice it and maybe even bring it up in conversation in a very healthy way. You immediately see that as a threat, and you do everything to figure out. You make tons of assumptions. They don't want me. Something's not right. Did I do something wrong? The minute you feel any sort of pulling away or that the closeness is not there, your security foundation is shattered and you don't feel good anymore in that relationship. Those are the securely attached. So I want to give you a visual. So imagine like a child, they get dropped off at daycare, first time they're getting dropped off, or at any point, if they get dropped off anywhere where they are separated from their parents, they lose their shit. Right? Anytime I think about insecurely attached children and the anxiously attached children, the world outside of the people that they know is not safe, and they cannot handle it. And the moment I feel my mom walking away, the moment you feel like the person you love so much and the foundation of your world is wrapped in, all is lost. Is that you? Is that you, sis? It's okay. It's all right. We need to learn so that we can be better. All right? Avoidant attach. My goodness. Avoidant attachments. Whoa. Right? So these are the runners, right? She's a runner. She's a track star. You know the song, right? So when you are avoidantly attached, right? Closeness is so uncomfortable to you. Right? Avoidant adults tend to believe that they don't have to be in a relationship to feel complete, which isn't necessarily like a bad way to think, right? But if you're avoidant, you generally avoid emotional closeness, and at times you may even seem aloof or distant, right? Not connected, and that's intentional. Relationships aren't always safe for you, and the closer someone gets, the more you move away. So imagine if you're in a relationship and the more you go towards the person, the more they kind of shy away from you. I would almost say that you may be dealing with someone who is avoidant in their relationship, maybe even a little fearful avoidant, which is the next one. Now, let me tell you a fun fact. I read this book called Attachment, and it said that a lot of the anxious people and the avoidant people find each other all the time. Y'all are always in relationship with each other, okay? You are always in relationship with people. You, the fearful avoidant people, which I'll talk about next, and the anxiously avoidant or just the straight up avoidant people, you guys are always in relationship. And let me tell you why. It's really a numbers game. There's a lot of people who are anxiously attached, therefore they struggle in relationships. They may always be in some sort of relationship, but it doesn't really work out all the time because their anxiety just kind of like throws them off. They self-sabotage, all those things kind of happen, right? And then the avoidant people are never ever in a relationship because they don't want to get hurt. So they avoid closeness all the time. So the people who are anxiously attached and wanting to get that intimacy is always seeking connection. So they're always out in the dating scene. They're always trying to meet people. And guess who they meet? The people who want nothing to do with it. Right? So it's really just sort of a numbers game where these people just tend to be available all the time just because of the way that they're attaching, and then they meet each other, and then your anxiously attached self is running after the person who is avoidant and wants nothing to do with it because you're both fearful of pain, just on different sides of the spectrum. That was really interesting for me, and it really made a lot of sense, especially when I was thinking about my dating experience, right? Let me know in the comments if that makes sense to you. So let's go on over to the people who are a bit of a mix of both, right? So the fearful avoidant person who's attached, right? The fearful avoidant attachment. Let me get myself together. So closeness in relationships scare you, but you, unlike your avoidant homeboy, right? You actually desire, right? The closeness. You want it, but it's so scary to you that although you may let it in, the moment you may start feeling some feelings and things start to get really hot, it scares the crap out of you and you exit, right? Because you don't actually want to get too close or close enough that the person will hurt you, right? So therefore, the minute it starts getting too hot and heavy, or maybe just you're feeling that closeness and intimacy a little bit too much, you back out, right? So this is for a fearful avoidant person. It's like this tug of war. It's this push and pull, right? You going in, it gets too hot, you hopping out, right? And your fear of getting hurt leads to avoidance. And although closeness is a desire, you struggle the most when you're trying to deepen a connection because of your lack of trust. You don't actually trust that it will work out. So although you want it and you start to get it, you don't believe that it's real. So you back out because you feel like, this is too good to be true. I'm going to get up on it out of here. Versus the avoidant person who's just like, I don't need it at all. I don't care how good it looks. I don't want it at all. This is safer for me. At least you'll put your foot in the water a little bit. You'll put it in and feel it. But once it doesn't feel right to you, that's when you hop out. Okay? Now, the securely attached adult, right? So closeness and distance aren't immediate triggers for you, right? So when closeness happens, you welcome it. You want it. You know that you want it. You enjoy it. But when distance happens, although you may not be happy about it, no one wants to think or feel that their person is pulling away from them, but you don't automatically go into a spiral of fear about it, right? You're open to explore it. You're open to understanding that this is a part of the process. And it may be hard. I'm not saying that it's not hard for securely attached people, but they have the bandwidth to deal with those uncomfortable feelings a lot more than the other insecurely attached people. It doesn't shatter their worlds in the same way, right? You understand that if either is present, right, in the relationship, you can manage it, okay? the give and take nature of relationships is expected and something that you engage in freely. And when you're securely attached and don't depend on the responsiveness or approval of your partners, you create space for the relationship to unfold naturally, and you don't abandon yourself in order to stay connected. It's the abandonment of self, the sacrifice of self, right? That we see in the other spaces that isn't really present so much in the securely attached, okay? So one of the things that I like to teach my clients when we recognize that you have some level of an insecure attachment is the idea of self-regulating. So again, go back to the baby, right? That is crying, crying, crying. Mommy left me, daddy left me, or I'm just around these people I don't know. The separation is just overwhelming. So one of the things that we want to teach children is how to self-regulate. How do I soothe myself so that I don't have to depend on the presence of mom or dad to be there in order for me to feel safe, right? So I always think about my daughter. It's something that I didn't teach my son, which I wish I did, is that soothing thing. So my daughter will be in shambles. Oh, she's crying, whatever, whatever, whatever. And then neither of my kids really, so my daughter cries more if I'm walking away or something like that. My son, not so much. He was really just like the life of the party. He enjoyed other people. My daughter, not so much. She's like, I like these set of people, and anyone out of that, not interested, right? But I gave my daughter a pacifier from very, very early on in life, from like out of the birth canal, right? And all the pacifier police, not interested, okay? Not interested, right? So now what I have recognized, the huge difference between my children is that my daughter has learned to regulate herself, and it may not be an internal regulation, but she recognizes that if I'm in shambles because my mom walks away, there's something here that can soothe me. I can soothe myself. So I literally watch my daughter when I'm crying, and I'm just like, I'm busy, can't get to you right now, sis. You're safe, you're dry, you're fed, right? I got things to do. I'll get to you in a second. I literally will see her looking at me, and crying and crying and crying, and then she'll reach for the pacifier, put it in her mouth, and she'll be fine. She'll still be upset, but she'll be fine. And she calms herself down, and then eventually she goes back to doing whatever she needs to do. That is a life skill. Right? That is a skill. So one of the things that I want you guys to learn is how to self-regulate. How can we, in the midst of us feeling super, super anxious, wanting to run away, not wanting to get close, how can I soothe myself through those moments? Okay, so for my anxiously attached people, you want to remember that what you're thinking is happening may not be actually what's going on, right? It's very different it's what I'm feeling is not always true, right? So you want to first remind yourself of that. So when you start thinking to myself, oh my gosh, they're pulling away, recognize that that's just how you feel, sis. That may not be what's actually happening. And you have to remember that people have lives and processes and things that they have to go through. And also they may not necessarily be fully aware of their behaviors either. It's not always about you, right? So don't make the assumption, right, about your partner's behaviors because you don't really understand or know what it's about always, right? Recognize how your behaviors change when you're triggered and try calming yourself by utilizing this period of pause. I love telling about the power in the pause, right? So if your usual way when you start feeling anxious and you're insecure and your partner's pulling away, what's wrong with you? You feel like you're doing, you're pulling away from me and you acting funny. That's what a lot of my clients tell me. And I'm just like, are you sure that's what's actually happening, right? So be curious at the very least. Let your emotions indicate that something's going on with you. And if you're genuinely secure about your partner, right? So are you when you're going and you're saying you're acting funny, is this more so to reassure that nothing's going on, or are you genuinely concerned about what's going on with your partner, right? Let's be clear. Right? Let's be clear about what's going on. Let's pause for a second and see if we can challenge some of our thoughts. Like, could something else be going on? And sometimes we may not find the answer here. We have to then communicate to our partners, okay? So exercise that pause. Pause for a second, evaluate your own emotions, check in with yourself, right? And then learn to communicate effectively, right? Your concerns to your partner. Some anxiously avoidant clients, right? You want to acknowledge your emotions and learn to effectively communicate them. Now, why this is a little different, right? Is because the push and the pull for you is the main difference, because the anxious one is always going towards, you kind of swing in between, going back and forth, right? So you want to feel what you're feeling. So if you start to feel like things are getting a bit hot and heavy, learning to like make sense of what that is, right? Understanding that it's not like, if all of the good indicators are there for you to like, this is safety, right? I always say, what is safety? How do you know that a relationship is safe? How do you know what are the green lights, right? So if you are feeling some type of way, being able to check in with yourself and understand that, like, hey, I know that this is what I want, right? Is this still what I want, right? And if it is, and I'm feeling like this, how can I communicate that to my client, my partner, right? So that I still am able to like keep them here, and I'm not running away because I'm making the wrong assumptions about something. Right? Your fear involves being let down or hurt, right? So saying things like, I'm really enjoying this, sometimes, things don't really work out and that's hard for me, I just want to like kind of bring them in, right? And have that conversation so you can get that security and reassurance from your partner, right? So the issue, right, with avoidance is that you prevent your partner from showing up for you in a way that would reassure you. So if you're not effectively communicating, right, what your needs are and how you feel safe and having this like a continuous like dialogue, right, then you don't actually allow them to do the things that they need to do, right? Or you're not paying attention to those signs and those signals of security because you're just fearful and you move away because, oh, things are getting too serious. But hold on, you want something serious deep down somewhere in here. Let's just be real, right? So if you aren't communicating or you aren't evaluating and paying attention, then you're not actually assessing if this is actually safe for you, right? So you want to learn how to communicate and talk about what those needs are, right? And then pay attention to see if it's present. If it's present, then that's a go. That's a go, sis. You're good, right? And then for my avoidant people who are just like, I'm not trying to hear nothing you say, sis, right? Don't suppress your emotion, because a part of the avoidance, right, is not acknowledging that maybe somewhere in there you actually may be okay in a relationship. You are complete like, I don't want anything to do with it because the thought of it is just so fearful. Like so scary for you, right? So don't suppress your emotions. Acknowledge what you are feeling, especially if you're in a relationship and you're just hanging out. You aren't really trying to do anything, but then, oh my gosh, this person is actually like kind of bomb. Okay, all right. So let's acknowledge that, right? So that we can create the space for more to grow in a way, right, that allows you to, just like the fearful avoidant people, to have people show up, right? And use the behaviors, right, as confirmation for like safety, okay? Acknowledge that you feel things, right? And allow people to show up for you. Trusting others is hard for you, but you can learn to trust and allow others in your world. And if you can identify your needs and what creates safety in relationships, you can align yourself with people who have those characteristics, okay? Very, very important. So that's how we self-regulate in those relationships that we're in that activates this insecure way that we attach, right? So not all is lost, right? If for some reason you are insecurely attached, which a lot of us are, right? That's not forever, right? You can learn how to become more attached. There's two things that you can do. So increasing self-awareness is like top notch for number one thing that you have to do for any sort of change that you want to have in your life. If you learn, right, the why and the how of your insecure attachment, what contributed to it, how it's showing up in your life, and what you do, right? What you need to do in order to shift that a bit. The more self-aware you are, the better you become at accessing the depths and locations of the scars in your inner landscape so that you don't keep falling into those same patterns for the rest of your life. So if you recognize that this is problematic, the way that I'm engaging in relationships, the way my anxiety is through the roof, the way that I deny my emotions or run away from people, if I can become aware of how this is impacting my life in a way that I don't want it to impact it, right? Then I can start doing the things that I need to change, right? To get the life or get people who's more in alignment. Okay, so become self-aware. Work on your awareness of self. And then change your associations with being alone, right? For some insecure attachments, being alone is where it's safe. Let's change that, right? And understand that having community and having connections can also be just as safe as well, right? So insecurely attached adults fear the abandonment, fear rejection, separation, right? And the uncomfortable feelings that come with being alone, right? So that's whether you're being alone or you find safety in alone. A part of that is attached in those fears of either rejection, abandonment, or whatever it is that you're running away from with those connections. So learning to change the association is vital to creating a more secure attachment in your relationship. So creating space and opportunities for you to acknowledge that being alone is not confirmation that you're undesirable. Being alone is not confirmation that you don't want any relationship, right? Being alone is not confirmation that you're not wanted or being rejected or something that you have to fear. It's not something that's terrible. How can we change our association and our singleness, right? So that we can either welcome and create space for people to enter there, or we can allow people who need to get up out of there to go. Okay? Very important. So I said a lot. I said a mouthful. We're about 27 minutes. I usually don't like to go past 20, 25. So I'm going to end it right here. Okay? I hope this was helpful. Like I mentioned before, if you want to learn more about just our practice, if you want to work with me directly, or anything like that, any sort of collaborations, or if you just want to reach out and say, hey, follow me on Instagram at @TheDesireeWilson, and at AnxiousBlackGirls_. Those are the spaces I live in online, or you can go straight to anxiousblackgirls.com to learn more. All right, guys, it was nice speaking to you. Bye. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope that this was very helpful for you. If you want to connect with us, make sure to subscribe.